Welcome back to the How to Entrepreneur, everyone. The number one Do Not Be a Entrepreneur podcast. Today, I've got another great guest. I know I say this every episode, but I really do mean it. We're joined by the CEO of Combs & Company, a full-service insurance brokerage firm with an expertise in the weird and unusual. She's also the author of Pancakes for Roger, a mentorship guide for slaying dragons. Yes, I'm aware of what I just said. Susan Combs, everybody. Susan, welcome.
Thank you so much. And I live in New York City, so if you hear like the sirens in the background, I apologize, but that's how it goes here.
We edit this. We'll tune them out. But one thing we won't tune out is your background. Please share with the listeners a little bit about yourself, your business, and maybe what inspired the book.
Yeah, so my name is Susan Combs. I own a full service insurance brokerage firm. I started it when I was 26 years old. In 2005, so you can do the math on it. I'm in my mid 40s, early 40s, if I want to say 43 is early. But I had been working for a large brokerage house, and I had a mentor that really pushed me to kind of start my own thing. And the opportunity kind of presented itself, and also a contract that I wasn't willing to sign. And so I was kind of said, sign or leave. And so I did.
Perfect.
It kind of worked out for me. And then the book is actually a tribute piece to my late father, who passed away from Agent Orange related throat cancer in 2018. And, if anybody's ever dealt with being a caregiver, which I was for my father, I relocated from New York City back to Missouri for a while to help take care of him. And it's grueling, and I really stepped into his shoes quite a bit. And so I went into work mode when it came to after his death, because I had a lot of plates to spin and make sure that they didn't fall. Mm-hmm. And I didn't really get to do a lot of the grieving process and the healing process. So the book was very cathartic for me. And I realized that I had such a great father, and not everybody does. And I was always taught that if you get good advice, it's your responsibility to share it with somebody else. And so the book is separated into 4 sections: self-love, family, and career, and a lot of the fun antidotes that I got from my father and other mentors along the way that kind of helped me through the business, as well as just life in general.
That is awesome. I heard you say Agent Orange. That's a lot of guys from the war had that. Older veterans, of course, but I'm assuming that's where your father picked it up.
Yes, my father is actually a major general in the Air Force when he when he passed away, but he was a Marine Corps helicopter pilot in Vietnam.
Oh, no way.
So he served in 3 branches. Yeah, 39 years and 4 months.
3 branches.
So, yeah,
every branch.
Except for Coast Guards. Yeah.
Oh my God, it's amazing. I used to work on those helicopters. Who knows?
Yeah, so he flew CH-46, so Sea Knights.
Worked on those.
Okay, very cool. He was a purple fox. Yeah, so you might even know about those. That's pretty cool. Yeah. So he was a great guy, and but yeah, he had a very long career, and then his civilian life, he was actually a judge. So to say I had a strict upbringing would be an understatement.
Yeah, he sounds like a real stand-up guy. I can imagine the household probably pretty orderly, clean. Everyone's in bed by 9 o'clock. That sort of thing. It's not the worst thing. I'm super interested in the book, not only because of the title, but from anyone, from Roger's 39 years in service to the civilian life afterwards, it sounds like he's sort of walked a pretty narrow path for quite a long time. And when you're doing such a thing, whether it's you're in the military, you're running a business since you're 26, or you're doing any long profession, you gradually become a little wiser. You go through a couple of challenges. There's a lot of growth involved. And I'm assuming all of that's baked into the book. I know that you mentioned that we've got, was it self-love, family, and career? Those are the 4 sections it's broken into. Maybe we can sort of, partially digest each one, and we can relate it to maybe what you've translated into business or into your personal life that sort of helped excel. With self being the first, we'll start there. What are some of your favorite pieces from that area?
Yeah, so the book's written kind of in vignette style. So like if you read it start to finish, it's like 3.5 hours. So it's easy to pick up and put down. So I think the shortest chapter is like two paragraphs. The longest chapter is maybe 10 pages. So it's really easy to kind of, and I'm not a fancy word person. My husband is, but I'm not, I'm a girl from, from Missouri. Yeah, I wrote it. Yeah, so you can read it. I was doing the audiobook recently, and I had the word posterity in there, which now I can say that word, but I said it prosperity for like 45 freaking takes, and
Everyone's got a couple of those. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. I was like, why the hell did I put this freaking word in the book? I never say it. I write it.
Yeah.
But I'd say like the most like poignant lesson for me on the self area is probably drive the car. Mm-hmm. So with, anybody that's grown up like on a farm and everything like that, or around a farm, a lot of us kids are driving at a much younger age than a lot of the city kids. I grew up in a town of 986 people, 6 miles from the dairy farm that my dad was literally born on. And so we were all driving. I think my dad was driving at like 6. I think I drove like the first time probably at 8 or 9. And then when it comes to highway driving, though, since my dad was the judge, we abided by the law. And so we didn't drive on the highway until, we were 15 and a half when we had our permits.
Good kids.
Yeah, we were good kids. And so, so my dad, he always just had a cadence about him: drive the car, drive the car, drive the car. And so he used to tell us that you could be the best driver in the world, but you have to worry about the people around you, and you have to be aware of your surroundings.
Yeah.
And when, things can go awry at any time, you have to remember to just drive the car. And so he would literally like take the steering wheel and jerk it. When you were driving, and you had to like keep your composure, you had to like keep your wits about you and say, okay, like, what am I going to do? I have to drive the car.
Yeah.
And so,
and hit dad.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the lesson he always said is like, if it's bigger than you, don't hit it. If you're bigger than it, hit it.
Yeah. It sounds like an excuse to not get hit by whoever's behind the steering wheel.
Well, with where I grew up, it was cows and horses. I mean, you had to worry about hitting.
There's some translation.
Yeah, very different than city life in New York City for sure. But so that ended up becoming such like a metaphor for life, to just put first things first. And so sometimes you can have this great big task you have to start doing or complete. And, if you just say like, okay, let me just drive the car. What's the first thing I have to do first? Like break things down into bite-sized digestible pieces, and then get the task done at hand. So, just kind of how that even translated just to me in general is like when I was caring for my father, and he had a feeding tube, and he was on oxygen during the latter part of his life. And if anybody's dealt with people on oxygen, if their oxygen levels go low, there can be some confusion. And so when one day his oxygen level was low, and he ended up taking his night medication when he should be taking his morning medication, and then he was just conked out the rest of the day. And so the drive the car method was like, you know what, we're putting away all the medications, only putting out what he's allowed to take at night, so that if he wakes up in the middle of the night, he's not going to harm himself or make himself in danger. So those were just kind of the lessons like on the self part that I think translated a lot for me.
Yeah, drive the car. When you initially said it, I was like, well, someone's got to drive the car when you're slaying dragons. I just assumed that it was something more along the lines of that. But it really familiarizes itself with the saying. It's like, I don't think, do, or don't think, just do. And it eliminates the analysis by paralysis from a lot of things, and sort of gets you at least moving one of your feet forward, even if it's not the right one. At least it's in the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the pivotal Pancakes for Roger story is that something you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, I mean, so how it all came about, I mean, is like I said, my dad had a feeding tube and he was on oxygen, and so my dad and I were very regimented people. So when I went back home to help be a caregiver for him, I'd get up at 5, I'd check on him if he was good, I'd go to the gym, come back, check on him again if he was good, I'd get ready for the day, and then I'd help him get his tube feeding and get set in his chair for the rest of the day. And I would just literally work on my laptop in my childhood home at the coffee table for the rest of the day. And if he needed something, I was right there. One morning after I'd gone to the gym, come back, he was good. I, came down from showering, and he wasn't in his hospital bed, because we were very fortunate enough to have hospice at home during the later part of his life. And so I went to the hospital bed. He wasn't there. I went to the living room. He wasn't there. I went to the kitchen, and he was there. And he had a placemat, and he was setting the table. And I said, Dad, what are you doing? And he said, well, I want pancakes for breakfast. And it just broke my heart. I mean, I said, oh, Dad, there's nothing in this world that I want to do than give you pancakes for breakfast. But we have a DNR, you're on hospice, we have a feeding tube. I was like, if you choke, we're done here. And I just don't think we're quite ready to be done yet.
Yeah.
So then he said, oh, yes, I can. Matt said I could. And Matt's my brother. Matt's a nurse, and Matt wasn't there that day. So I knew we were dealing with some confusion from the oxygen level being too low. So, I took his feeding tube formula over to the microwave, heated it up for 14 seconds, because the general always wanted 14, not 13, not 15, 14.
Absolutely.
And and then I set it on the table, and he said, what's that? And I said, that's your syrup. And so the oxygen levels had started rallying around. He kind of understood it. He smiled, and he said, okay. So then I went on to share that story with people, because he never asked for anything. This guy was just amazing. And for a year he had a feeding tube, and he would say something smelled good, but my brother and sister-in-law had a baby when real close to when he relapsed the first time. And so he was content just holding the baby and sitting down with us while we ate.
Yeah.
And so after he passed away, I took one day off work in New York, and my husband said, "Why don't we go to the diner and have some pancakes for your dad?"
That's the sweetest thing.
Yeah. And so then my husband took a picture. I shared the story on social media, and I said, you know what? It's all about the little things in your life that make the biggest impacts. So if you're so inclined, why don't you go have some pancakes for Roger and remember to appreciate the things that you have in your life? And so then it just kind of exploded. So people started having pancakes all over the world and taking pictures on social media. So we have a hashtag Pancakes for Roger. So that's how the whole Pancakes for Roger thing started. And I'm actually, I do a lot of work for the University of Missouri Veterans Clinic, and that's part of the law school there. And they provide free legal services for veterans and their families navigating the VA claims and appeals process.
Awesome.
So the month of February, we started making a donation for every pancake loving picture we got on social media with hashtag Pancakes for Roger. And then we made a donation. So the first year is like, a couple hundred. This last year, when the book came out, we got 18 countries, all 50 states, and just like thousands of dollars of donation for the Veterans Clinic. It was so, so cool. So then the book came out this year on my dad's birthday, which this year was 2/22/22, which is kind of cool. And so we even expanded it to, you could get a picture with the book, and that counts as a Pancakes for Roger picture, or you could get a twofer. So you had people with the pancakes and the book, and it just kind of worked out that way too. So it was pretty cool. But it's just
proceeds from the book, they do get donated.
Yes. And so part of the proceeds from the book actually do go to the Veterans Clinic too in perpetuity. So it's kind of a way that I can just honor my dad and his legacy, because he was just one of those guys that was good when nobody was watching, and he mentored and helped so many people. And, after he passed, just the people that reached out and just gave me stories about things that he did for them, how he mentored them. Right after the book came out, I was on Veterans Radio, and a guy was listening, and he emailed me after the episode, and he said, "Oh my gosh," he said, "I met your dad when I was a young F-15 pilot." And he said, "I was in flight school." And he said, "Your dad was a giant." My dad wasn't a giant. My dad was like 5'8". He was like, "But your dad," he said, "he just had a presence." And he said, "Your dad gave me the advice, there's rocks in the clouds." And he said, when you're flying, you never know what's in the clouds. You always have to anticipate and know what, worst case scenario, what to expect. This guy went on to become actually Colin Powell's XO during Desert Storm. And he was also a flight instructor. And he said, every single class I taught got that advice from General Combs. And it was just so touching that, he took the time to reach out to me, and I've actually stayed in touch with him. So that's pretty cool too.
Yeah, it's no surprise at all. I mean, being someone that's sort of been in that younger mentee position amongst higher ranking officials, or you're being a subordinate in general in the military, there are some hard asses, and then there's some guys that you really look up to, and you sort of appreciate it, or there is some good advice there, and that's usually a pretty pivotal time in any, I think, young man's life or career, and to have those sort of adult, like almost father figures in a sense, that are able to sort of pass down that type of mentorship, or those sayings, things that you just don't forget. It's a dime a dozen. And for your dad to be in 39 years, when you said just one person reached out, I thought you were going to start going down the list, because
I had several, but that one was pretty cool. Yeah. Well, and it's so cool, because so I was connected with this guy that he was actually in the 82nd Airborne. And he does, a lot of just volunteer work to help other veterans and things like that. And so he had a friend that was having problems with his VA claim. And so I said, well, put him in touch with me. I said, I'll get his information. And I was like, and then I'll connect him to the clinic. And so then this guy works at a bank in Philadelphia. And he said, I was talking to a guy that I work with that used to fly CH-46s. He said he was a retired lieutenant colonel. He said, I started talking to him. He was like, your dad spoke at a thing he was at. And then I started thinking, and I said, well, does he know Aaron Eckerberg? And he was just like, oh my God, Festus. And it was insane that it's just a friend of mine
all over the world.
Yeah. There was also a Purple Fox that I met him at my father's funeral. He was the Purple Fox representative at the Missouri funeral. And so he and I have become really good friends. And it's just insane how it doesn't, the military family, it's just so small. And, and it's so small with people that are doing a lot of good work. And it's pretty cool when you kind of encounter those people. And I just, I think of my dad's just being kind of proud that, that we're trying to keep his legacy going that way too.
Yeah. And it seems like a small community. And I know that we've just talked about the little things, but, that little community does a lot of things at scale, from the family orient to, the mentorship to the things that they do for our country. And then there's the guys that get out, the guys and girls that get out and they go to work at they're helping veterans push their claims along. It's 2% of the country, I think, that enlists in the military, but it can seem like 100 sometimes. And to sort of segue out of the little things, we've got some slaying dragons to talk about. What advice do you have your readers, or to help them feel like they are slaying dragons, and how that might pertain to their personal or life and business?
So, one of my favorite quotes is like from Marcus Aurelius, it's get active in your own rescue. And I think sometimes we can get stuck. We can get stuck in business. We can get stuck in grief. We can just get stuck in a problem, or just like be sitting in the middle of the room saying like, who's going to save me? And at the end of the day, like, you're the maker of your own destiny. And so, I've just always loved that quote, because, you have the power to change your situation. Some of the advice my dad used to give me is he's like, you have three main facets of your life. You have the person you're with, the thing you do for a living, and the place you live. He was like, if you're happy with 3 out of 3, you're living a golden life. Even if you're happy with 2 out of 3, you're not doing bad. But if you're happy with 1 or none, only you can be the person to get off your ass and do something about it. So that's always been something that, I've told a lot of people that I mentor, like young kids, old kids. It just doesn't matter. Yeah. Because a lot of times you can have people that are in their 40s and 50s that get stuck and they feel like that they can't do anything different. And you can always change your day.
Mm-hmm. And that, I'm looking at or thinking back to the self-love, family, career. You got your household, your family, your career, and yourself. That's 3 out of those 4 components right there. And I'm assuming love sort of bakes itself into all 4 of those. I'm sure that there's probably a book on its own that you could write, containing all of the sayings and all of the quick, snappy remarks that your dad had. Are there any amazing lessons that you've sort of remembered, like that pilot did when he was younger, in addition to the drive the car?
Oh, one of the things, and I actually have it like tattooed on my wrist, is no step for a stepper. Mm-hmm. So that's a military saying. And so I heard that I was always a driven kid, but it's just like, but sometimes I was not the book smart kid. I was a street smart kid of the house. And so it's just like, when it came to like, studying and stuff like that, I did fine, but it's just like, but I had to put in the effort. And my dad used to say, "Oh, come on, Suze, it's no step for a stepper. You got this." And so, those are the things that I like draw on, like when I need kind of like the little, kick in the pants, so to speak. But I think one of the things I respected most about my father is he treated each one of us kids as individuals. And it wasn't, and it was just like, what punishment worked for me would never have worked for my brothers. And, so it's kind of cool. Like, I shared a lesson, like I was 16 years old and we had a foreign exchange student that lived with us from Germany named Anna, and she and I are tremendously close. Our families are very, very close. And I got ticked off and I threw like an empty milk carton at her. And but we don't throw things in the house, Susan, Don't
throw the ball in the house.
Yeah. And it's just like, and my dad took my door off the hinges. And so for a 16-year-old girl where privacy is so important, like that was such an annoyance. And like, and I shared about it on social media, and I had this 19-year-old kid that was like, "That's abuse." And I'm like, "No, it's not. It's inconvenient." And they're like, "That's abuse. It's like, he might as well have taken away your food." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" I was like, a 16-year-old girl that has to walk her ass down the hall to change her clothes in the bathroom as opposed to her room. I was like, that's not abuse. That's an inconvenience. And I was like, I apologize. I learned my lesson. And like the door was back on the hinges in a day.
That happened to my sister as well.
Yeah.
I recall the night.
Yeah, they're probably from the same thing. But the one thing that was funny is because I know how to hang a door because, I'm Roger Combs' daughter. So like I crept across the room because I thought he put the pins on his dresser and they weren't there. And I'm like creeping across the floor to get back to my room. And like my dad, booming voice at the base of the stairs, has the pins in his hands and he holds them up. He's like, looking for these, little girl. I'm like, I was going to the bathroom,
Yeah.
but it's just like, but he had my number because he thought like me. So it just, but I just laugh. So, those are the things I've always appreciated how I was raised and how I grew up. But I think the older I get, the more I appreciate it. I had a friend that shared on social media. She was having trouble with her teenage, stepdaughter. And I was like, I had a demerit system growing up.
Oh, no, in the house?
Yeah.
Oh my.
Yeah. So I was just like, I said, I was like taking the door off of hinges for a teenage girl. I said, works really well, really quick.
There are some absolutes and ultimatums that just ultimately work. We all, I'm sure we all look back and appreciate some of those things a little later in life. And that doesn't sound too bad.
No. Oh, I had
some worse
a
stories.
wonderful upbringing. I was like, thank God I didn't tell a story about like having to go pick my own switch,
Yeah, see, we can't do that on this.
No, we can't do that. We can't do that anymore. Yeah.
I think myself, as well as the listeners, they appreciate that the direction or the path your father chose to take with you and your other siblings, treating you as individuals. It speaks to probably how you may treat employees or how you develop relationships outside of work, and just really being personable with people. And the extent or the length of a successful relationship really depends on being able to do that and commit yourself to it and genuinely be a part of the process. It's not a hat you put on when you go to work. It's and it's something that you really carry around with you and you put out into the world. And that's what I think makes for good mentoring, good parenting, being a good friend. All of these sort of components, they all really come back to that. And there's never really too young an age to start that, is there? I've talked about this before. My children, it's like, how young are they going to be before I start, or how old will they be once I finally start treating them like grown-ups or like people,
Well, and I think for me, like when it comes to like my employees and stuff like that, I mean, I'm very transparent. I'm also very direct. And, but I also I think there's like a million ways to get from A to B. And so I always tell people, like when I'm showing or I'm teaching or something like that, I'll be like, okay, this is how I get from A to B. I don't care how you get to B because your thought process is different to me. Like just get to B. So like, this is how I do it. Colleen might do it a different way. Sean might do it another way. Like just, see what's going to make sense for you. I mean, because I think that especially I own an insurance brokerage, man, it's a rigid business on certain things. And they're like, if you don't fit in this one box, it's not going to work. And so you have to backpedal and be like, okay, let's break this down. Let's make it understandable. Let's figure it out together,
reverse engineer it.
Yeah. And so I think it's, it's good to look at those things, but I think it's also good to let people have the freedom to work in the way that they need to work, because, some people are visual learners, some people need the words on the page. If there's so many words on the page, I'm like, I will send an email back that says TLTR, too long to read. And I make them Google what TLTR means, because I'm like, I'm not doing them any favors. I'm like, but there's so many words on a page. I'm like glazing over and I can't do it. Give me the bullet points. And and also too, I have to remind myself to do the good morning. How are you? Because I'm not that person. I don't care. I don't care if you ask me how my day was. It's not going to hurt me. It's not going to hurt my feelings at all. I'd rather you just get to the point so I can get on to the next thing, because I'm a busy person. So
that's got to be a Roger trait.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Well, I will say my dad and I used to say, give me the Reader's Digest version of the story.
TLDR.
Yeah. So it's just so we would always say, give me the Reader's Digest version. And so my dad and we always said we could get more accomplished in a 5-minute conversation than people could get done in 2 days. So
I live by that ethos as well.
It's efficiency. It's very important.
Practice it, preach it. I heard you mention getting from A to B. Everyone does it differently. I'm assuming that somewhat falls into how people navigate themselves in business work or personally. And you've got the 3 facets of life. Is there any correlation there, what they are and how readers can navigate them and how that might apply to them actually being proactive?
Well, I think happiness is different things for different people. I'm a Taurus. I'm motivated by money, right? It's just that's what gets me my juices flowing.
No shame.
I want to beat you. I want to beat you. I want to destroy your whole family. I want to win. That's me,
fun, right?
Yeah. But it's just but then you have people that are more motivated maybe by time off. They want to have the flexibility. So it's just when I've had moms that have worked for me, I've always been like, look, here's the deal. If you want to be there to take the kid to school, you want to be there to pick the kid up, you want to be the Halloween mom, like, fine, we will always make that work. As long as the work gets done. I don't care when the work gets done, but that's my philosophy and I'm okay with that. Not every standard office is okay with that. I've always been okay with that. So when COVID hit, it was like, whatever. Like, it's just, we didn't even miss a beat because we had that flexibility built in. Everybody had the ability to work from home from the beginning. And so it just worked for us. So I think everybody can figure out what works for them, but they also have to understand that, like, you know, I took a sociology class in college, and I remember the professor saying words mean different things to different people. So I can be like, hey, Dylan, how are you doing today? And you can say, hey, Susan, I'm fine. Fine to me could be a 10 out of 10. Fine to you could be a 3 out of 10. And you could be having the worst day ever. And I don't even know it.
Yeah.
So it's just like understanding what the person really means behind the words, I think is pretty important. But then I think one of the things that I think is really important is, like, I try to define my role in conversations. So I'm a person that people come to for advice a lot. And that's fine. I'm happy to do that. But I also know that I'm a fixer mentality and not everybody wants to be fixed. So when somebody's
decompress,
they just want to vent, and that's fine. So it's just like, so if you're coming to me and Dylan's like, oh, Susan, I had this horrible day, like, I'm having this problem with my kid. And I'm like, my first question is going to be, do you want to vent or do you want my advice?
Preface.
And it's just, and then it's like, then I know what my role is before the conversation starts.
And that's very important.
Yeah. But it's just like, you know, people forget to do that. So, I mean, I have friends that, like, they start trying to fix their husbands and I'm like, did he ask you? And they're like, no. And I'm like, then why are you doing it?
You know, if you're just hearing this now on the podcast and you're learning it here, let this be a lesson, because learning this out in the real world isn't always as smooth and as, you know, it's not something you can do alone with the earbuds in. It may be at the cost of some friction, the cost of some friends, the cost of your job. Yeah, being able to effectively communicate and seeing through semantics, or just really being, you know, emotionally discharged from a situation when you're taking in what someone's saying. It's so important. And it took my partner in business to help me realize that, because I used to be someone that sort of just let things blow over. And if someone said, oh, you know, I'm having an all right day, I would just think, oh, you know, it's probably good. You know, I don't, it doesn't mean that it's a 3 on the 10 scale. It's probably more of a 7. And that's me. That's how I would define it. And even my siblings, my sister, she's a venter. She doesn't want advice. So when you give her advice, it actually it makes things worse. And that's the case for a lot of people. And I couldn't be more receptive of what you just said. Hearing you say that, it sounded like you were talking to me directly. Yeah. That's awesome. So we've got seeing the signs. It's one of the big lessons in your book. Does that have something to do with semantics, or is this something more worldly and universally?
This is more woo-woo stuff. Yeah.
Ooh,
yeah. So I'm a big believer in signs. So I feel like people that have passed are just without our reach. And so I was gifted a book by an author named Laura Lynn Jackson on the year anniversary of my father passing. And she's actually a medium. And so this book's called this Secret. It's oh God.
The Secret.
It's like, son of a bitch. Like, yeah, we're like, okay, that's gonna be edited. It's just like, it's son of a bitch. Now I gotta fucking, like, now that I know you're gonna edit it anyway. It's like, I know it's the signs, the secret language of the universe. There we go. You finally got it. But it talks about, like, how to communicate with people that are gone. And so I get a lot of signs from my dad because I'm also open to it. And so, you know, things for me for signs are just like, sunflowers are a big one because he used to plant sunflowers in our garden every year. Helicopters are another big one. The number 45 because he was born in 1945, repeating 2s because his birthday were repeating 2s. And so, you know, like, anytime I just, like, I'm having a bad day or whatever, I'll just say, hey, Dad, like, I need a solid here. And it's just like, it just feels like you're getting a hug. My husband doesn't believe into it. You know, he's like, but he points out the things for me. So it's just, I think it's one of those things. It doesn't cause any harm and it just kind of makes you feel kind of good. But I think you have to be open to those things.
Yeah, I think that it's healthy to have at least 1 or 2 of those, whatever nuances, you know, that may be, or whoever it's related to, things you can identify with to sort of, you know, help manage the mood, manage the balance, just manage everything more effectively. I mean, hopefully there's not too many negative signs out there that you pay attention to, but I mean, if we can disregard those sorts of signs and sort of keep our eyes on the prize, I know personally that, you know, It's helped me be better in business. It's helped me, just, you don't sleep enough, you're having a bad day. Hey, what do you know? You see 22 helicopters with 45 painted on the side of them. That might have some positive effect.
Yeah. Well, yeah, don't get me started on like sports, like superstition or something like that. I mean, we'll be here all day. Like my husband's like, you're insane.
Yeah, no, I think he believes it personally, but no, we'll save that as well.
Oh yeah, my husband calls the definition of insanity being a sports fan, and I get that. I'm a huge Chiefs fan, and yeah, I have my jerseys on a rotation, and once they lose, I don't wear that jersey for the rest of the year. And they're like, wait, what? I'm like, no, it's bad juju. I gotta
have you ever seen any sports movie ever?
Next season.
Yeah, exactly. So we've got the signs, and another lesson is be in love even at third sight. I read that aloud before we hopped on the call and had no idea what it meant. I'm sure a lot of people initially don't. Please help us understand.
I mean, yeah. So when I met my husband, I was married. You're getting like into some dirty laundry here.
Okay.
So I was married to somebody else when I met my current husband. Yeah. So I had my starter husband and I have my forever husband. And so I met my now husband at a Manhattan Chamber of Commerce networking event. And I was married. I wasn't looking for anything. I wasn't a cheater. I was married. And so I met him and I was like, okay. And then in New York, like as a lot of places pre-COVID, you would get together for one-on-ones and learn about each other's businesses and things like that. And so my husband owned a technology firm at the time. So he and I got together for breakfast. That breakfast was like over 2 hours. And so I was like, this is interesting. And so I put together a happy hour with a bunch of my friends. And I said, okay, I want you to talk to the guy, but like, you can't really talk to him because he's like the licked cookie. I don't know what I'm going to do here, but I kind of have a crush and I don't know what to do about it. And so I put together the happy hour. All my friends loved him. They thought he was great. And I went to a rooftop bar with a couple of girlfriends afterwards. And my girlfriend was British and she was talking to the father of a child. And she's like, oh, Luke, I can't talk now, honey. Susan's either going to have an affair or leave a husband. And I was like, and I heard it. And I was like, oh my God, I'm done. I am done.
Yeah.
And so I literally took the train home. I told my husband I was done and that was it.
Oh, wow.
And so in a 6-block drive, I told him I was done and I wanted a divorce. And
you know.
Yeah. And so then 2 days later, I called Sean and I said, okay, because he was like, yeah, I don't mess around. I don't do the engaged thing. I don't do the married thing. And I was like, yeah, I said, we don't have to worry about that anymore.
Yeah.
And it just, 2 weeks later, he told me he loved me and that's been over 18 years now. So it's just, I also think, my first husband was fine. He was a good guy. He just wasn't my guy.
Yeah.
And he served his purpose. That sounds kind of crude, but it's just
love,
like,
sort of.
But he was stable when I needed some stability in my life. But I didn't have those mushy love feelings. And I thought you could cultivate those. You can't. If they're not there, they're never going to be there. And so with that first marriage, it was more like business. It was calculating. I talked to my CPA. I said, yeah, we love each other, whatever. Is it better for my taxes to get married before the end of the year or after the first year? Like, no joke.
Yeah.
And he said, well, he's unemployed. There's a significant difference in income. Do it before the end of the year. I was like, okay. And literally we went to the Justice of the Peace 2 weeks later. Mm-hmm. So it's just, but that's not love. That's not how you want to marry. And so like, when I met Sean, it's just like, I had the mushy love feelings. And so, but he's great. He's just a great guy. I always say like all guys want to be his best friend and all women want to sleep with him. Because he's really hot. Yeah. And he's just a good guy. And, he's like this nationally ranked Spartan racer. He just got back from Florida doing a trifecta, 3 races in 36 hours. Insane. And he's in his 50s. He's like in better shape than most 25-year-olds. It's insane.
I can attest.
Yeah. So it's just like, because you're like in better shape than many 25-year-olds, right? That's what you're telling me.
Oh no, I'm the 25-year-old.
Oh. Yeah. Yeah, but it's just he's a good guy. So it's just like, so the love at third sight was just like it wasn't anything I was looking for, but I was like, but there was like that, the little spidey sense that I was like, this guy I need to take a second look at. And that first Christmas, I remember my dad saying, he's like, Susan, he was like, I don't think for any reason this won't work out with you and Sean, but if it does, we're just letting you know that we're probably going to keep Sean. And
Perfect.
But what a wonderful thing for your parents to say to you, right?
Absolutely.
That they just think that this is such a right match for you, that they're just so happy for you. And I mean, I took that as such a compliment. And so I always tell people, I'm like, man, find the person that your parents are like, oh, we'll trade you for him. And I was like, that's the one you want to go with.
Yeah. If your parents and you can agree on it, that's when you know you've got it right. Yeah. That's awesome. So I'm seeing this sort of this repetition with you, Susan, where when you seem to like something, or when you seem to think something's the right move or decision, you gravitate towards it.
Oh my God, I'm all in.
Yeah. There doesn't seem to be much of the the same side of the magnet sort of keeping you away from whatever it is that you think may or at least early onset is going to be a good decision in the long run. Now, does that sort of intuition? I know your current husband. You've got the personal life, you've got the freedom and the wiggle room to sort of do that there. But have you ever once thought about leaving the insurance brokerage, or maybe things that you've sort of sided against doing based on that sort of same gut feeling?
So with my business, I think one of the reasons I've been successful with where I'm at is I've been open to opportunities as they've come along. Mm-hmm. So I think sometimes people just kind of get pigeonholed and they say like, okay, this is what I do. This is the path I'm on.
It's how much money I make.
Yeah. And so it's just like, I own an insurance brokerage, but I also do expert witnessing. Mm-hmm. And so that was something that I never thought about doing. It wasn't something that was ever on my radar, ever something I was like, oh yeah, let me get paid to be an expert and be in court all day long. No, like I would never thought about that. Yeah. I'm like, huh? But it's just like, but I've been doing it since 2015 and I absolutely love it. And I love the consulting aspect of it. I love the strategy behind it.
That's your game.
Yeah. And it's like, and I'm really good at it because it's just like, it's math. And I my first major in college that I didn't finish was chemical engineering. And so I took a lot of math. And so it's just like, so I get to use that background and it's a lot of fun. But then even also the niche markets that we have in the brokerage firm. I used to do entertainment stuff. So I worked for the University of Missouri and I did concerts and sporting events. So one of our niche markets is entertainment and hospitality. Awesome. So it's just like, so it kind of
so diverse.
Yeah. And it's just like, and then we do a lot of international companies opening up their first US location. So it's just like, and when the book came along and, different board opportunities and public speaking, and those are things that I've just been open to. Is the insurance world forever? I don't know. But I think there'll be some part of it that's forever for me because I do enjoy doing it. But I think at some point, Pancakes or Roger is going to turn into a nonprofit for me. Mm-hmm. Because I do feel a tremendous pull to philanthropy and also to military causes. Yeah. So, I'm on the advisory board for the Veterans Clinic at Mizzou. And then I'm also been doing some work for the Travis Manion Foundation. And so I feel a big pull to both of those organizations. And so I think, I've kind of been kicking around, like maybe this will end up turning into like an education type of, charity. So it's just because I think there's so many military charities out there and so many good work being done, but I haven't seen one that's just like a flat out scholarship fund. And so I'm like,
look for them.
Huh?
I mean, I'm a veteran myself, and I've gone down that path of like trying to get funding for school on top of the GI Bill because I want to get my master's and had to do some real crazy stuff to get it covered. And it was a lot more difficult, and it was a lot more not only difficult, but there was like a 50-50 shot, which are not good odds when you're talking about your education.
Yeah. So that's what I was like, because the GI Bill is great, but it doesn't cover everything too.
Exactly.
So it's just like, so I was like, why can't, because we set up actually a scholarship at the University of Missouri Law School for veterans that want to go to law school at Mizzou.
That's awesome.
It is because that's who my dad was. Like my dad came back from Vietnam and he had taken one semester of law school before, his number was pulled and he went in as an officer. And so, then he came back and he finished law school. And I remember him saying like, he wore a hairpiece when he would register for classes because it wasn't a friendly military world. And so people in crew cuts in the 60s and 70s at a big college campus, like they didn't take too kindly to it.
Still like that in some places, even where there's, a vast majority of active military and veterans like Southern California, depending where you are, it can be a great thing. It could be something people, wish they didn't have to deal with every day. And the haircut, that'll give you away every time.
Yeah, exactly. High and tight, right?
Yeah.
But that's one of the, so I've been kind of kicking that around, that I'm just like, you know what, maybe in the next 5 years, the Pancakes Garage turns into like an endowment fund.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, and it doesn't have to be like a traditional 4-year school. Like it could be a trade school, or it could be like a leadership course that somebody wants to take, or like if somebody wants to get, say they're like me in the insurance industry and you want to get another designation or certification, like why not? So it's just like, all it is money. So it's just like, and I'm good at getting people to do what I need them to do. So it's just like, if we can get a
You're the
fun setup
catalyst.
and kind of look at it that way, I'm like, I think that could be pretty cool. So, and then it can work with a whole bunch of different veterans organizations that are already established too.
I feel like that's the easy part for a lot of it. There's already so many, the web is so interconnected already. All you need to do is become a part of it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I think I've definitely stole enough of your time. I'm definitely going to still ask you a couple more questions, but we're going to be inching towards our closing here. How can readers learn their worth aside from reading the book? What are some of Roger's or yours personal sayings or lifelong lessons that you've experienced through challenges and growth?
I've shared quite a few of them already. I would say I mean, it really depends on, kind of the topic. I mean, I have the book here with me. It's just like, I think, one of the things I tell people, especially like after losing my dad, I mean, I'm not the only person to lose my dad in my 30s, right? There's been a lot of people that have lost their fathers or mothers much younger. I mean, I have a girlfriend that lost her father 40 years ago and she's like 47. So, but when my dad passed away, I was the only one really in my circle to go through that. And so I was so fortunate enough that my dad taught us to have the hard conversations. And so, before, my dad had been diagnosed in 2008 and he was, we had 10 relatively good years, and then he relapsed twice before he passed away. And the first time he relapsed, he had to have another major surgery and we didn't know if he was going to be able to speak again. And so he and I sat down and I spreadsheeted everything, from who the plumber is, who the electrician is, who should I sell the Winnebago to, who do I call to talk about the VA claims, who do I talk to about your pension to get transferred, because he had a judge's pension and he had the military pension. Who, like the pickup truck, who would be interested in buying that? Who should I talk to for the farming? Like all this stuff, because, we also have 2 farms back in Missouri too. And so I was so glad that I took that time. I mean, even like who to sell the guns to and what he wanted on his headstone. It's just like we had those conversations and all the passwords, and people we had that time. I mean, we had we sat down in that June in 2017, and then we sat down again in February before he passed and updated it with things. And so when it came time when he passed away, I had a blueprint of what to do. And so then I also I have the luxury of setting my own schedule. So I put 4 hours of family office time in my week for the next year, because I knew things were going to come up for my mother and she was going to get mail from all different places and not know what to do. And so she knew on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons from 2 to 4 o'clock that was my family office time. And I was going to call her and say okay, what mail did you get? Let's go through it together. And so I always tell people man, have those tough conversations that you don't want to have. And I know that sometimes culturally it can be different. I mean, my 2 best girlfriends, one's from Guyana and one's from Jamaica. And culturally speaking, the parents feel like if they have a will, that means they're going to die. And so but you have to deal with that. I mean, if you have the cultural, So it's just kind of understanding how to navigate that and have those tough conversations, because, oh my God, I was so glad that I did, because I have friends. I mean, my brother, one of his best friend's fathers passed away unexpectedly a week ago. And I know the woman, the wife is spinning because she has no idea what to do. And so I was grateful that I had that time, and we had, my dad had the wherewithal. I had the wherewithal. I mean, it was gut wrenching. I mean, I would have to stop and just cry sometimes, but I knew we had to have those conversations, because a lot of times I think regrets in your life are about the conversations you don't have. And so I'm glad to be able to sit here today and say, I have no regrets with my relationship with my father. I know I was a good daughter. I know that I showed up when I needed to show up. And I know that I've been there for my family and kind of orchestrated a lot of things that were his roles. And I stepped into them. It doesn't mean it's not hard. And the other advice I always pass along to people is like, if you have that one sibling that's going to take care of the shit in the family, it just happens. Like my brothers knew when I was 10 years old, I was going to be, have the keys to the castle.
Yeah.
And so, but you got to check on that person, because a lot of times the people that have their stuff together are the ones that are like spinning all the plates, just waiting for something to fall.
Yeah.
And all they need you to do is say like, hey, Dylan, how are you today? Are you doing okay? Is there anything I can do for you? You can go 100 more miles if you just have somebody check in on you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that I try to remember too. And I always tell people as well.
Yeah. You never know exactly what's going on behind the curtain, or it reminds me of a lot of comedians. I mean, it's sad to say. Yeah. The truth is there. Listening to you sort of explain have the tough talks, the harder conversations, and how it applies to your situation with your father. It got me thinking about instances where some business relationships sort of got off on the wrong foot. And had I gone about it, having those tough talks or those harder conversations earlier on, like many people should, that decide not to for whatever, passive reason there may be, it's ultimately not, it's never a good decision. You kind of need to get those non-negotiables out there and talk about those uncomfortable things. I mean, not only are you going to save yourself a lot of grief in situations like your own, but you might save a lot of time and money and embarrassment in the long run as well out there in the business world.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So this is the end of our show. Before the end of our show, every episode, we ask a couple entrepreneurial rapid fire questions. I'm quick three, almost one word answers if you can get them out. First one, entrepreneurs or maybe other Rogers in the world, in the business world, who do you follow?
Who do I follow? I follow a lot of freaking people.
Any entrepreneurs out there you like in particular?
Nancy Giacalone. She's a peer mentor of mine. She owns a brokerage firm in Seattle, Washington, and she inspires me. Julie McNeely, Kristen Alfheim, both entrepreneurs too in my industry. That just, you need to have those peer-to-peer mentors that you can just pick up the phone and say, hey, I need to pick your brain on this.
Yeah.
And those, I think, give you such valuable lessons. Power. So those are probably my top three I would tell you about.
Awesome. Number one thing you would tell your younger entrepreneurial self?
Oh, always be open, and it's going to be really great.
And where can people go to find out more about yourself, your business, and Pancakes and Rogers, all things.
All things
yeah,
Susan.
All things Susan. Yes, that's
okay.
like a show. Yeah.
So my website's combsandco.com. Mm-hmm. That links to like all the social media. The book website's pancakesroger.com. That's fun. It has a lot of the pancake pictures and things like that. It has our pancake map. So it'll, next month, the pancake map will get all zeroed out, and then it'll start adding back on starting in February. And it's a lot of fun. And I'm pretty fun to watch on social media. So I have a lot of fun. I'm big into CrossFit. So you'll see some of my workouts and throwing around some heavy shit and having a good time along the way.
I think you're going to steal some listeners. I'm going to cut you off right there. Susan Combs, CEO of Combs & Company and author of Pancakes for Roger, a mentorship guide for slaying dragons. Get out there and start slaying people. One slay, two slay, win slay. You get the picture. Thanks for coming on today, Susan, and sharing how Roger and yourself have approached a lot of life's challenges, wisdom, and growth. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks so much, Dylan.